Hi, I'm James Dunn. Welcome to the Inside Network.
Welcome to INDepth, and I'm speaking to Henrietta Pacquement, who's head of the Global Fixed Income team and head of sustainability at Allspring Global Investments, and we're talking about fixed income and the climate transition. Welcome, Henrietta.
Good morning.
Great pleasure to have you with us, even virtually. It's loud and clear. I wanted to start, Henrietta, by asking, how does an astrophysicist end up running a fixed income portfolio?
I think it takes a lot of similar traits to go into astrophysics as it does to go into what is one of the more technical sides of the fixing of the financial markets. Certainly you need the curiosity, you need the maths, the interest, and a fair amount of dedication to go into both topics. And I think you're trying to get to something similar. In the astrophysics side, you're looking to see how things work, how we got to the stage we got to here. I think you have that same looking for answers and looking for how things work in the fixed income markets, given the role they have in finance, particularly today when you look at our global setup.
That's a very good answer. And on this, the topic we have in front of us of fixed income and the clean energy transition, what specific role do you see fixed income playing in the transition to clean energy, and how will it achieve that?
So I think fixed income is key. If you look at the kind of financing that we need over the next few years, if you just look at the energy sector alone, it's some 2.5 trillion a year between now and 2050 if we want to hope to achieve our goals. And that's going to come in a variety of forms, but a decent chunk of that is going to come to the fixed income market. So I think it's an important area to look at when thinking about what to do with one's portfolio. And yes, fixed income doesn't necessarily have the same voting rights as equity in terms of being able to influence what a company does going forwards, but we provide funding. And that's an important aspect. Companies need to have access to the markets and sometimes frequently. And also, if you look at when companies tend to come to fund themselves in the fixed income market, it may be a difficult time. And so they want to be able to rely on their investors. And as a result, we certainly think that gives you a seat at the table. So 2 things for fixed income. A lot of the funding is going to come from that area of the market. And not only that, as an investor, you do have a seat in the table to influence what companies are doing from a strategy perspective, and that includes climate.
As head of sustainability, when you're putting together a fixed income portfolio from a sustainable viewpoint, where do you stand on exclusion versus engagement?
I think if you look around, we're not there yet. There's progress to be made. So using exclusions, can be a little heavy-handed. Would be my stance there. And as a result, we do value engagement with the companies that we invest in. I think one also needs to realize that the transition isn't just about the energy markets. It's about all the sectors across the economy. It's about the auto sector. It's about real estate. It's about building materials. Just cement. Cement is actually, the production of cement is some 8% of global emissions. So it really is taking a holistic view, having a look at all sectors and see what change they need to make going forward. As a result, I think it's tricky to sort of have too strict rules in terms of exclusions, and it really is a question of interacting with the company, getting to understand what their strategy is from a climate perspective going forwards. It's not something that we can just flip the switch on. It's something that is going to evolve over the years. And as a result, even the engagement piece isn't a one and done. It is something that is going to continue over years to come.
On that point about engaging with issuers, what does that process look like?
So I think, particularly as a fixed income investor, you have multiple touch points with a company. You have a touch point when they come to the market, you have a touch point when they issue debt, and you can spontaneously ask to engage with them over time. So certainly you have access to the companies that you can invest in as a creditor. It's an opportunity to use that going forwards. And then I think it's really a question of having a think about what you want as an outcome for the engagement. What are you asking the company for? Is it a question of better disclosure, more information about what they're doing from a climate perspective? And that's really, what we've seen more of in the last few years as companies sort of really figure out what they want to do and how they want to tackle the climate challenge. And then I think increasingly it's going to be a question of keeping track with what they're doing, getting a good understanding if they're meeting their targets or on the contrary falling behind. So I think then it's a question of keeping track of what their trajectory is, and particularly if they're falling back, getting a good understanding of why that is, and seeing what remedies they can come up with going forwards. I'd say a third one, and maybe a final one, is the credibility of their strategy and plans over years to come. I think particularly at the moment, this is an interesting one. Are the targets aggressive enough? Are they credible, and is it something that they can actually achieve over the next few years?
What are some of the potential trade-offs from an exclusion-based approach if you were to take that?
So I think the biggest issue with exclusions, particularly when they're extensive, is that it can really modify your investment profile over time. Certainly, different sectors tend to perform at different times, and depending on the asset class, I would say as well. I think that is something to sort of contend with. It can sort of increase the tracking error against the sort of general markets if you have a too heavy-handed approach from an exclusion perspective. So that's from the financial perspective. And then I think one has to be thoughtful about what's going on from a climate perspective. It really is a system change. It's not something that can be done overnight. You need to sort of have the sectors that are going to be working together towards the goal going forward. So I think one has to be, unfortunately, realistic about what can be done over the next few years. And that does mean that having an exclusionary process that is too strict can be counterproductive.
One of the most challenging questions for investors who are contemplating implementing a climate transition strategy is benchmarking. Which index should we use? What would you tell them?
So in that case, I think it's again, you mustn't lose sight of what we're looking to achieve. It's not just a question of decarbonizing a portfolio. Actually, that's not that hard to do, depending on the asset class you're looking at. It really is trying to facilitate the transition of the real economy. As a result, we do think it does make sense to benchmark yourselves against a generic benchmark. Why? Because it's representative of the economy outside, generally, it gives you the sort of reference you're working with in terms of variety of sectors, depending on where they are from their climate journey. So also for certain more structural asset classes, I'm thinking fixed income in particular, you've got a lot of levers to pull in a portfolio to generate returns over time, and to allow yourself to sort of benchmark yourselves against a classic index. That's not to say that other indices are necessarily bad, but they are going to modify your opportunity set in a way that you may or may not have control over. Or they could be quite restrained. I'm thinking of green bond indices. Yes, great, but actually they're still quite small. If you look as a proportion of the global credit markets, for instance, in investment grade, you're looking at maybe 3.5% of the market. That's actually quite small. So it's set to grow, most likely, over years to come, but restricting yourself to that universe can introduce some distortions there.
Concentration risk is an often overlooked risk in investment. Can investors in this sector and people investing with sustainability in mind, can they unwittingly find themselves over-concentrated?
I think that sort of feeds into your question about benchmarks, right? If you take a benchmark that's too concentrated to start off with, yes, absolutely, that can have that kind of effect. Using the example of a green bond index, you have the notion of greenium there, that maybe could be associated to technicals of too many investors going into that area of the market. Then, going back to your question about exclusions, again, if you're too aggressive with your exclusions, that may reduce your investment universe there. So I think those are considerations to take into account, absolutely, when building a portfolio. And well, I'm a portfolio manager. I'm going to say the broader the guidelines, the better the opportunity set, and the better the chance of generating attractive returns going forwards.
Henrietta, what does success look to you in 2 years' time from running this portfolio strategy?
I think it's twofold. I think we are running portfolios, so we do need to look at the performance aspect. So performance is one aspect that we would be looking at to define success in these strategies, and then it's getting a portfolio and getting companies in that portfolio that are on the right path from a climate perspective. I mean, that is the sort of second goal that we're looking to balance in these types of strategies. We feel very strongly that it's something that investors need to participate in and need to facilitate. That's really the role of the financial industry there, be it on the banking side, the insurance side, the asset owners, pension funds and so on. They've got their role to play in trying to get us on the right track going forwards from a climate perspective, and it's going to be a challenge. We have to be honest about that.
I've been going in depth with Henrietta Pacquement, Head of the Global Fixed Income Team and Head of Sustainability at Allspring Global Investments. Thank you very much, Henrietta.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.